Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs Talks Music and another episode of The Sequel to Success. And can you please welcome back to the channel our good friend Davey Cretin from New York City. Davey, how are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Bicycle Legs. It's great to be back.
And today we are going to be talking about this album here, Big Generator by Yes. Now, obviously, this is the sequel to the success that was 90125. Great album. We're not going to talk too much about 90125 because Davey and I have just recently done a show all about this album over on Rock Daydream Nation with my wonderful Australian compatriot Peter Kerr. I will leave a link to that in the description, so please do and give that show a watch if you haven't already. But suffice to say, 90125, best-selling album of Yes's career, certainly in the US.
hmm
It's triple platinum or something like that. It had a number one hit single with Owner of a Lonely Heart. It rescued Yes. I mean, Yes had broken up after Drama, and this brought them back and made them, you know, bigger than they'd ever been commercially. They go on a huge world tour in 1984 and 1985. Unfortunately, never came to Australia. And during that world tour, they release this, which is 9012 Live, the solos. It's it's a short album. It's like you can see on the hype sticker there, it says mini album, you know. It's a
It's
glorified,
an EP. It's
yeah,
it's a glorified EP.
and it's mostly the solo turns from each member of the band. You have C or Psy, I never know how to pronounce that, by Tony Kaye. You have Solly's Beard, which is Trevor Rabin's solo spot. You have Amazing Grace, which is Chris Squire, and Whitefish, which is Chris Squire and Alan White's solo turn. You have Soon, that wonderful section from the end of Gates of Delirium, as John Anderson's solo turn. And you get a couple of the songs from 90125 in Hold On and Changes. But it's a bizarre document from such a great world tour. They could have done a wonderful live double album or something like that. Instead, we get whatever this is. Do you remember buying this at the time or?
Yes, I do. I bought it on vinyl, like the one you just showed. It's a cash grab from the record company because they knew they were going to take a long time to come up with a follow-up album. So that's what it is. I think it came out right before Christmas also in 85, right?
That's, yeah. And yeah, I mean, it is a cash grab, but it's also a missed opportunity, I think. As I say, they could have done a wonderful full live album, had that great set list with a bunch of the songs from 90125 and the songs from the old days that they were covering, things like I've Seen All Good People and that sort of thing. And then they just put this out instead, and yeah, missed opportunity for mine. But yeah, then it they went back into the recording studio. They were in the recording studio by the time this came out. I think they started recording around August of 1985, something like that.
Yep.
And and it took them nearly 2 years to record this Big Generator. If this was a film rather than an album, I think it was fair to say that this would have been one of those ones that they describe as being stuck in development hell, because the writing took ages, the recording took ages. They went through a bunch of producers. Trevor Horn was producing it to begin with, and then he ditched the project partway through. And I was looking this up before the show, Davey. 90125 was recorded in two different studios, in Psalm Studios and Air Studios, both in London. Big Generator was recorded in seven different studios in three different countries. I mean, Yeah, it was a schmozzle. It was a real mess of recording the album. But that doesn't always mean that the album's going to be a disaster. Um, sometimes those albums that take a while to record, they do end up still being pretty good albums. What do we think of this album? Well, you're about to find out as we go through this track by track. But do you remember this album coming out and what the anticipation was through the Yes fans and all that sort of thing?
It was a big deal because it was the follow up to 90125, their biggest commercially selling album, like you said. And I was waiting for it, and then it came out, and I was a little underwhelmed.
Yeah. The other thing that I will mention, that's the cover for the vinyl. It had a completely different, well, not completely different, but it had different colored cover for the CD release.
Right.
So, and it had the yes and the symbol sort of made bigger and put in a different place and all that sort of thing. But I never did like that artwork, I've got to say either. I always thought it
I
was,
agree.
and it's probably worse on the album, on the vinyl cover, because at least the CD cover is a little bit colorful, whereas this is just kind of, yeah. But I suppose in 1987 it was considered, it was computer generated and all that sort of thing. So, it was considered cutting edge at the time and all that sort of thing. But uh, so let's go through it track by track. And it starts off with the song Rhythm of Love. Now, this was the second single released off the album, or at least it was in the US. Didn't do particularly well. I think it only got to number 40 on the charts, on the Billboard
Correct.
charts. So, how do you feel about this as an album opener?
It hit number 2 on the mainstream rock chart in Billboard. So
Mm,
it did chart much better there with the rock audience, and it was played on the radio. I remember hearing it. It's written by everyone in the band except Alan White. So it's almost like a band composition. And to me, you always hear with bands and artist groups, the difficult second album. And to me, this defines the difficult second album of this particular lineup, which was a whole new lineup. They were going to go with the name Cinema. The record company got involved. They said, you got four members that were in Classic Yes, call it Yes. You'll sell more units. They did call it Yes. It sold a heck of a lot more units than anyone expected, probably. So this is the difficult second album. They first started in a studio in Italy, which was Trevor Rabin's idea. They got some stuff there. It didn't work out. They went to England, 3 more studios. Then they moved to LA for 3 more studios. Like you said, 7 studios. So it's recorded piecemeal. I think the great thing about 90125 was you had basically all the songs were Trevor Rabin songs. And he had saved them up. He was looking to put out a solo record with these great songs. And here he's quoted, he's on the record as saying, I want this to be a band record. 90125 was mainly my songs. Let's make this a Yes album, a band record. And that may have been a problem because each member had their own ways and thoughts and ideas. And to me, the record as a whole doesn't gel as well as 90125. So I just wanted to say that. Getting on to Rhythm of Love, it's a decent song, but it was never one of my favorites from the record. It starts out with that vocal sampling of all the voices. And when they do it live, they always played that vocal sample.
mm.
And a lot of this record has that world music touch that Peter Gabriel was doing, Paul Simon was doing, but I think those guys did it a lot better. You hear snippets through most of the songs on this album with these fluttering synths and keyboard lines and vocals, like a disembodied John Anderson voice comes out of one speaker than the other. And just Yes didn't do it as well as Gabriel or Simon, in my opinion. So it
Yeah.
has a good guitar. I'm sorry, what?
I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. It has a good guitar solo. Rabin has good guitar solos on the record. I just don't think a lot of the songs are fully formed. And if they are, they just don't bowl me over like a lot of tracks on the previous record did, like Changes, Hearts. Even Owner of a Lonely Heart at the time was cutting edge. Now to me, it's a very overplayed song. And the overplayed song on this album to me is Rhythm of Love, because Yes kept doing it live in a lot of different incarnations. And they'd play a great classic Yes song, Then they played Rhythm of Love, especially on the Union tour. And to me, it just didn't fit. And it always seemed just off to the side, left of center. It's okay, but it's definitely not one of my three favorites from the record.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I actually quite like this song. I don't love it. I think it's a good single, and I think it's a better single than the one they chose for the first single, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But I think it does have at least some of that 90125 sound going to it. Those vocal harmonies give me Beach Boys vibes, you know? And especially that ooh, I
I'll
can't
give you
sing
that.
that, but that's got a real Beach Boys kind of vibe to it to me. Um I think, yeah, I mean, it's got one of those typical Trevor Rabin shreddy guitar solos, with a lot of tapping and all that sort of thing. And, if you like that, you like that. And if you don't, you don't. I mean, one of the things that I mentioned when we did the show with Peter on 90125 is that, Trevor Rabin's a great guitar player. He couldn't be more different than Steve Howe. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't think you could find two more sort of different guitar players. Anyway, I think Rhythm of Love is a good opener. I don't think it's the best song on the album by any stretch, but I think it's a good way to introduce people to the record. I think there's other stuff on this album that disappoints me a little more. Speaking of which, we get the second track, which is the title track, Big Generator. What are your thoughts on this one, Davey?
I never liked this song. Something about it just rubbed me the wrong way. It sounds very artificial. A lot of the
Hmm.
stuff on here is the album is very processed. It's less, oh, what's the word? Darn it, I can't think of the word I want, but it's less human than 90125. That was a more, you could hear the band members, they were having fun, they were in this new project. And here it's 90125 Junior. It's sort of the same album, but it's not nearly as good as 90125. And this song is very robotic. That's a word. It's
Hmm.
very robotic. It has a lot of synth sounds and noises. And I think they're doing that on purpose because it's called Big Generator. That's what the song is called. That's what it's about. But it sounds very artificial. That's it. And processed to me. That's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for. And it's noisy. Even the guitar solo is a little just catches your ear like, oh, I don't like that tone. It's just annoying. It's
Yeah.
definitely probably my least favorite song on the album.
Yeah. I agree. I think to me, this song, two things about this song. One, I feel like it really is a conscious effort to recapture what they did with Owner of a Lonely Heart. And it fails because it's just not nearly as good a song.
Right.
But also, to me, with the production on this song, it sounds like they threw everything at the wall and tried to see what would stick. And it's like every trick in the book they could think of, a sample here and a big drum sound here and a padang and boom bada, you know, everything they could possibly throw at this song, they threw at it. And then when it came to mix it, they just left everything in. And it, as you say, it's cluttered, it's noisy, it's really, really artificial and computer sounding. And, you know, you ache for a little bit of sort of organicness, a bit of humanity in this song, and I don't think you get it. And again, it's just not a very well written song either, I don't think. It's written by the whole band, and
Yep.
I don't know, it doesn't work for me
Well,
at all.
another thing to what you're saying is because they recorded in 7 studios, and the production credits are listed as yes, Trevor Rabin, Paul de Villiers, if I'm pronouncing his name right, hopefully, if I'm not sorry,
Yeah.
and Trevor Horn, who started on the project, is named last as a producer. So because they used all these producers, basically Trevor Horn and Paul de Villiers, 12 engineers and assistant engineers combined. 12, a
Mm.
dozen engineers and assistant engineers. The only name I recognized, Dave Meegan, And you might know that name
Yes.
from
Marillion, yeah.
exactly. That's the only name I recognized. He worked with Marillion after this for a bunch of albums. Some really good stuff, like the Brave album. I think he produced,
Yeah.
if memory serves. So you have 12 engineers, and it's just a lot of hands in the project. And it's almost like a modern day song where you see, like a Beyonce song, has 6 co writers on it and 4 producers. And it's like it's
Mm.
this simple song with all these people, their hands in the pie. And to me, that's what ruins the record. Just too many studios, too many engineers, and the songs are half baked, basically.
Yeah.
A lot of
Too
them.
many too many cooks and it's still half baked. So there
Yep.
you go. Um, yeah, I agree. The next song is Shoot High, Aim Low. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this one because I do feel like this is a song where musically they're trying to stretch out a little bit.
I love this song. This is one of my top Yes songs. This song was released, it wasn't released as a single, but it was played airplay on the American rock stations, and it hit number 11 on the Billboard mainstream rock charts. I did hear it on the radio. 7 minute song, just about the longest song on the record, credited to all 5 members of the band. And Shoot High, Aim Low, I think, is a great song. Definitely my favorite song from the record. This, I think, works, and this song I love. There are some great songs on this record, just to me, not the first 2 so far. But
Yeah.
Shoot High, Aim Low, it's melodic. Each member shines on it. It's memorable. It's way less grating than the title track. It sounds like almost a classic Yes song brought into the modern era. And it's not harsh on my ears like the title track was.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely a more mellow sound. It's definitely a band that is, as I say, trying to stretch out a little bit. You have Trevor Rabin playing some really, really fast and fiddly acoustic guitar on this song,
Yes.
um, which I think he's a great acoustic player. And also, the other thing I love about this is it really sounds, even though it's like a group credit for the writing, this sounds to me like a real collaboration between Trevor and John. You know, musically, I mean, even the way it's sung, it sounds like a conversation.
The way
You
they're
know, John,
alternating vocals, yes.
yeah, absolutely. So I like that about it. The only thing I don't necessarily like about this song, funnily enough, because I love Yes epics and all that sort of thing, I think it's a little bit long for what it is.
Hmm.
I think it would have worked better as a 5 minute song. I think they did stretch it a little bit. I don't think it needs to be 7 minutes long, but that's a minor quibble. I think it's a really good song in the whole. It's certainly the best thing on the album so far. And
Yes.
there's only 8 songs on the album, so where it'll rank, it'll definitely rank in the top half for me. So we get the side one closer, Almost Like Love, and I'll be interested to hear what you think of this one.
Now that we're up to the song, this is one of my least favorite Yes songs. Definitely my least favorite on this album. I think I'd rather hear the title track than this song. I never liked that keyboard sound. It dates it to the mid 80s. And by the time this record came out in late 1987, it's almost past its sell by date. I hate that keyboard line. I always thought it was all keyboards. And it's actually also, there were horns mixed in on this song. There are 4 horn players credited: Lee Thornburg, Nick Lane, Greg Smith, and Jimmy Zavala, who also plays harmonica on the next song, which we'll get to. So it actually has horns, but that whole, we were discussing, I mentioned it on the last show on Peter Kerr's show on Rock Daydream Nation. When Tony Kaye plays keyboards live, he does a lot where he's playing just the chords with one hand and he's just waving or fist pumping. And to me, it's just, I could see him doing it. And I just don't like this song. Definitely my least favorite song on the record.
Mm.
And it's 5 minutes. I always thought this was a 4 minute song. This just
Mm.
about hits the 5 minute mark. It's 5 minutes. Get rid of it. Take it off the record. Horrible. One of my least favorites. Sorry. I know there are
Yeah.
people who will like it and you could like it, but we all have different tastes and we hear and see things differently.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, this just doesn't sound like Yes. It doesn't even really sound like I'm familiar with the Trevor Rabin solo albums that came before Yes. It doesn't sound like anything from that sort of Trevor Rabin solo period either. It sounds like to me an attempt to write a hit single. Obviously, even the band didn't think it was a particularly good attempt at writing a hit single because they never released it as a single. But yeah, it's a pretty flaccid way to end side one, I think. It's upbeat and but it's really in your face and becomes an annoyance
Like the
to
title
me
track.
anyway. Yeah. But in a different way, whereas the title track is just like hitting you over the head with, every crash bang wallop production value they can. This is just, I'm not saying it sounds like her, but this is annoying in the way a Shania Twain song is annoying to me. It's just that, I could imagine, that, what's that song? Man, I Feel Like a Woman. They play that bam, 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 at sporting events and all that sort of thing, right? And it annoys the living daylights out of you. I could imagine them doing that with this dun, 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 dun. It's got that same level of annoyance for me. So,
And it has a fake ending. You think it's ending, and then it restarts and it comes back, and John Anderson starts singing. You get the horns, bam, 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 bam. It's like end already. Just the fake
yeah.
ending is ugh, bad fake out.
So then we get on to side two, and we get what was the first single off the album, which is a song called Love Will Find a Way. Again, not a particularly successful single, at least not on the singles chart. I know it did well
Right,
on the rock chart, but on the singles, to me, I only really pay attention to the singles chart because that's based on sales, rather than airplay or whatever. It got to number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not terrible, but it's definitely not anything from the 90125 album.
right.
They had I think they had three singles off that album go top 20. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think of this song? I'll be interested because I definitely have
But
thoughts on this song.
okay, before I tell you what I think about this song, it hit number one on the Billboard mainstream rock chart. In the UK, their home country for the most part, it hit number 73. And it looks like, because I'm at the end of the page here, I think it's Australia. It hit number 80 in your
Mm,
country.
yeah.
So it barely bothered the Hot 100. I
Mm,
really always like this song. And I can't believe it's 10 seconds shorter than Almost Like Love, because that song is way too long. I think this is a good pop rock song that Trevor Rabin wrote, and this is the only song that Rabin wrote by himself. I think it's melodic. I think it's memorable. The one minor quibble I have with it is in the chorus when he says, "Here is my heart waiting for you. Here is my heart. I eat it chez nous," which is French for at home. I think that's very forced in there, and that bothers me
mm.
a little. But melodically, I think it's very catchy. I think it's a wonderful song. It's more of a
Yeah.
Raven song than a Yes song, but I still enjoy it. I like this song.
Well, yeah. I remember seeing an interview with Trevor Rabin. He had originally written this song for Stevie Nicks, and she was going to add her own lyrics to it. So, I always thought, I'd listen to that pre-chorus, that you were talking about. Here is my
Yes.
heart waiting for you. Here is my soul. I
Oh,
eat
that's
at
it.
Chez nous. And it's like, to me, that always sounded like a placeholder lyric, that's something that you just put in the song because while you're writing the song, you'll put like Paul McCartney, when he was first writing the song Yesterday, he had the melody first and he put in dummy lyrics at first just so he could remember the
Scrambled
melody.
eggs.
Scrambled eggs, ooh, you have such lovely legs. Just terrible. But obviously he replaced those. But that I eat at Chez nous line to me sounds like that sort of a placeholder lyric that, he was going to go back and replace with something better and he just never did. And apparently what happened is that Chris Squire, I think, heard that song on a demo tape and said, we need this song for it for the Yes album. So he kind of badgered Trevor Rabin into letting Yes do it. I like this song. I agree with you. It's a good pop song, it doesn't sound like Yes at all. It's mostly sung by Trevor Rabin, and as much as I like Trevor Rabin as a vocalist, I really do. In the context of Yes, I mostly want to hear John Anderson singing. Not exclusively, necessarily. You know, Trevor Rabin has some great turns on 90125, which I talked about in the show we did with Peter
Mm-hmm.
Kerr. He has some great vocal turns on that. You know, Changes. He sings the verses of Changes, and I love that song to death. But this is a single. You know, to me, a Yes single needs to have John Anderson up front on it. That's just me. Um, the funny thing is, too, even though this charted, as you say, really low here in Australia, whereas I don't think Rhythm of Love did at all, you're much more likely on classic rock radio here in Australia now to hear Rhythm of Love than you are to hear Love Will Find a Way.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
it just never gets played. So yeah, it's a good song. It's just not particularly yes sounding for me. So that's my quibble with it. So then we get Finalize. I actually quite like this song, but there is one bit that I will mention that I have definitely a problem with. What are your thoughts on this song?
I think this is the other great song on the record. My second favorite song, Finalize, 6.5 minutes long, written by everyone except the drummer, Alan White. And on the airplay chart for airplay, not for sales, this was on the Billboard Modern Rock chart. It hit number 20. So they had four songs only from this record that charted on the mainstream rock chart: Love Will Find a Way, Rhythm of Love, Shoot High, Aim Low, and Final Eyes. And they've charted number 1, 2, 11, and 20. So they kept get less airplay. This record didn't do as well. For the previous record, 90125, they had 6 out of 9 songs chart on the mainstream rock chart. And here it's half the record. So you could tell the record company wasn't pushing it as much. They sort of like put it out there and said, okay, let's see what it does. And to only release 2 singles from such a long awaited album, I was
Yeah,
very surprised
yeah,
by that fact. But
absolutely.
Final Eyes, I think, is another Yes mini epic. And it has the
Yeah,
sections, the mellow, the faster, the heavier. I think it's a great song. And it has John Anderson. What you missed from the last song, this has a lot of John Anderson on it.
yeah, absolutely. Not only do you have a lot of John Anderson singing on this song, I I'm prepared to be corrected on this. I think John Anderson probably had a big hand in writing this song because it has that classic Yes sound to it. You know, the melodies on this song, that person to person, woman to man, that sounds like a 70s Yes melody. You know, instrumentally, it's very much in the 90125 80s Yes, that sort of thing. But that melody has that John Anderson kind of sound to it. It has that 70s Yes sound to it. I don't know if you're quite understanding what I'm saying, but to
No,
me,
I
just
do.
that, yeah, that melody really sounds yesy to me.
But in the
So,
credits, in the songwriting credits, it's Rabin. Tony Kaye is mentioned
mm,
second, then John Anderson. So maybe
yeah,
Tony Kaye had that fluty type keyboard sound, and maybe that
yeah,
because he
possibly.
contributed musically, they gave him the credit above Anderson. I just think
Yeah.
that's weird that John Anderson is listed third out of four in songwriting credits,
There's one bit though that I don't that just brings this song down for me a little bit,
which
and
is
it's the part that Trevor Rabin sings, and it's not the fact that Trevor Rabin's singing it. I think he sings it just fine. I just don't like the lyric, and the lyric is, and I know you think there's nothing more to say, and I know that I've got something to say. And it's like, what?
I like it
Just I don't.
musically.
Yeah, but just that lyric just bugs me. It makes no sense. It sounds the word that I've heard for this sort of thing is a deepity, whereas it sounds like it's something deep and meaningful, but it's actually just sort of nonsense. And That's what that lyric sounds like to me. It sounds like a deepity. So that's the only thing that bothers me with that song. But on the whole, yeah, it's a great song, and melodically, it's probably my favorite thing on the album. So yeah.
I understand you have a problem with that part. Like when I hear I Eat It, Shay New, it
Mm,
just strikes me as what the heck is that?
yeah. Yeah. Then we get I'm Running. So what are your thoughts on I'm Running?
This is credited to all five members of the band. And I think on the tour they started off doing this one, but then they dropped it pretty fast. Longest song on the record, almost seven. It's 7 minutes and almost 40 seconds in length. I think it's good. I just don't think it's great. Just maybe something with the I like the way it starts out with Chris Squire's bass guitar, and all the band members come in, and then it stops, and you get that. It's very world musicy. It just, I don't know, it just never struck me as a great Yes epic or great Yes song. It's okay. It doesn't annoy me like almost like Love or the title track Big Generator. It's
Mm,
decent. It's just not upper echelon like I think Finalize and Shoot High, Aim Low are.
yeah. I think that's fair comment. To me, this sounds like um, they had some little bits and pieces that they just kind of stitched together, sort of Frankenstein's monster style. Um, Maybe they were thinking of doing a mini version of like the Abbey Road medley or something like that, but I know I did read something where Trevor Rabin was saying that Abbey Road was kind of a template for them when they were recording this album. Not that you can hear any of that on this album whatsoever, but I feel like in that respect, in the respect that this song is like a few little like I feel like there's a Trevor Rabin bit here and there's a John Anderson bit here and there's a Chris Squire bit here and they're just kind of stuffed together to make this song. And I don't think it's quite the sum of its parts.
Yes,
So,
I agree.
so the album closes with Holy Lamb, Song for Harmonic Convergence, written solely by John Anderson. And of all the Trevor Rabin era, yes, this is the only song that would be like solely credited to John Anderson. So, what are your thoughts on Holy Lamb?
It's the shortest song on the record. It's not even 3.5 minutes long. I like this song. It's a cute, pretty John Anderson song. It sounds like it would fit in on any of his 80s solo albums, like in the City of Angels or something, one of those records. Maybe not the early 80s albums, but the later 80s records. It's a nice song. It's pleasant. Probably my fourth favorite song after Shoot High, Aim Low, Final Eyes. Then Love Will Find a Way. And then I would put Holy Lamb as my fourth favorite
Yeah.
from the record.
You see, this is, as I said, it's a John Anderson solo write. It definitely sounds yesy, so that's a big plus for me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually would have liked. I was talking about Shoot High, Aim Low, where I thought it was maybe a little over long. I wish this song was a minute or two longer. Um, I feel like it kind of ends, and I'm still like, I feel like there was more to say musically
If
and that sort of thing. It feels like it's finished in a hurry,
it
and
fades out.
yeah, and that's a bit of a shame. But I love this song. It's probably one of my favorite three songs on the album. So
Nice.
um, it's a great way to end the album. It's wonderful that side two ends so much better than side one does. Because, side one ends with Almost Like Love, which might possibly be the worst song on the album. And then
It is.
side two ends with Holy Lamb, which is one of the best songs on the album for me anyway. So I would have loved, yes, to explore that direction musically a little bit more. So what are your overall thoughts on the album?
I've always had it in for this record. There's a certain Foreigner record I'm going to do eventually, a ranking of the Foreigner studio records on my channel, Cretin Classics. And there's one record that people might think is a classic or a very good Foreigner record that I've always dismissed and never enjoyed. Something about it doesn't sound right to me. It's one from the 80s. That's all I'll say. And to me, this record is right up there. I've always had an axe to grind with this record, and I think it's because of Almost Like Love and the title track, Big Generator. They're just very harsh on the ear, and they're not as pleasant as Yes music usually is to me.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, for me, this is a big letdown after 90125. It's and it's a muddled album. There's parts
Mm-hmm.
of it that are trying to be 90125 Part 2. There's parts of it that are trying to get away from that and trying to do other things. There's bits of it that are trying to sound like classic Yes from the 70s. And it just becomes a hodgepodge. It's not a cohesive whole of an album. And I think the fractured way in which the album was made contributes to that a lot. I think also there was fracturing going on within the band. And
Yes.
in the end, though, this album still did pretty well. It was platinum certified, so sold 1 million copies in the US.
Yep.
That's still pretty darn good by anybody's standards. But it's a definite come down from the triple platinum of 90125.
And another thing is, it took so long. It's 4 years. It came out after 90125 in the 80s. That was a lifetime. Bands used to
Yeah,
put out a record every year, maybe 2 years at the most, until
yeah,
Def Leppard and Boston started elongating that. But for Yes to not release a record for 4 years, that's another thing that hurt the sales. And by then, everyone was like, oh, yes, we've moved on to other bands. We like
yeah,
U2 now. They're famous, they're popular, they've got great songs. So we like U2. We're not going to bother with Yes. We heard a
mm,
song, it's not as good as the U2 singles, are much better. Let's buy the U2 singles and the U2 album. Just some other chart action for this record. It reached number 15 and 90 in America, and 90125 hit number 5, if I think was the highest point. In your country, Australia, number 44, the UK, number 17. In Canada, it hit number 14. It went platinum and sold 100,000 copies. And the last country I'll mention, because I don't want to go through every country, Japan, number 14, reached gold status there, 100,000 copies sold. So here it did the best in America with 1 million sold. And the year-end charts for 1987, it hit number 72.
yeah. So, I mean, I think we can say about this album, at least from our opinion, I mean, as far as commercially, it still did pretty darn well. But artistically, it's definitely a letdown from 90125. I think, do let us know in the comments, though, whether you think this is a, lost classic Yes album or if it's one of your favorites or whatever. Now, what came after? Well, what came after is that John Anderson had had enough. He wasn't seeing eye to eye with Trevor Rabin about the direction of the band. He went off, left the band, got together with some of his old Yes mates, and put out this record here, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe, with the going back to the Roger Dean artwork too. So this is a very uh, a conscious album to reach back into Yes's past, and I like this album quite a lot. I don't think it's a perfect album by any stretch, but I think it's a much better album than Big Generator. What are your thoughts on Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe?
Oh, I agree with you. And the way it starts, well, first of all, the thing that dates the ABWH record, as we used to call it here in America, just ABWH, because Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe sounds like a law firm. That was the joke going around back then in the late 80s. But it's got, like you said, the Roger Dean artwork is great. I saw the tour multiple times. It was great. Excellent tour. The first song, Themes, comes right out. And to me, Anderson, with his lyrics, was talking about getting out of Yes when he says, "Begone, you ever piercing power play machine, cutting our musical solidarity for those who would," and it just goes off. And to me, it's like a big kiss off to Yes, that song lyrically. But
Mm,
I think there are more great songs on Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe than there are on Big Generator. Themes is great. The opening track, I really like Brother of Mine. Quartet might be my favorite song. And although it's a bit repetitive lyrically, Order of the Universe I like.
yeah.
Oh, and the the ballad, the Wakeman Anderson ballad.
Oh,
The
okay. The
meeting,
Meeting is the
the
one.
meeting.
Yeah.
That's it. Just hit me. The meeting, I think, is a great song. So to me,
Yeah.
there are more highs on the ABWH album than on Big Generator. The one
Yeah.
thing that dates ABWH is Bill Bruford's electronic drums. I know a lot of fans had a problem with that, thinking, well, he
Mm.
did that in King Crimson, go back to the acoustic drums, but that might date the record a little. But to me, it's a better record than Big Generator.
Yeah, I think that Bill Bruford's electronic drums on this album stick out more than they do on the King Crimson records from the 80s.
Definitely.
Um, but I want to mention one other song that you didn't mention, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful song. And it's important to me as an Australian because it's talking about Indigenous Australians and that sort of thing. And that's the
Yeah.
song Birthright. Um, and the song Brother of Mine, the single edit of that, actually got quite a bit of airplay here in Australia, which
Wow.
unusual because progressive rock, especially in the 80s, but even in the 70s, Australia was never a big market for progressive rock. So Australians always liked their music a little rawer, a little, tougher and that sort of thing. But Brother of Mine got quite a bit of radio airplay in
I'm
1989.
surprised. Wow.
So I remember hearing it on our sort of local station, which was Triple M. They used to play it quite a lot. So meanwhile, the rest of Yes, you Chris Squire, Trevor Rabin, Tony Kaye, and Alan White were stuck off in California, not producing very much. And then Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe were working on a follow-up album with a producer by the name of Jonathan Elias. The less of said about whom, the better. They smashed this together with what Yes West had come up with, which was only about 4 songs, and came out with this great album cover, but
Yes.
really not very good album, Union. So this was the next Yes album as opposed to the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. And this, I think it's fair to say, Davey, this makes Big Generator look like a cohesive album
I agree. Absolutely. 100%.
because this is a dog's breakfast of an album. Um, you've got the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe songs are just absolutely messed around with by Jonathan Elias, who inserts himself into the writing credits for most of them as well. He gets in extra guitar players and extra keyboard players. Like, who replaces Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman in Yes? I mean, and not only replaces them, but replaces them with faceless session musos. It's like, what is up with that? Um, and then, you get the occasional Yes West song with John Anderson singing. You get Chris Squire doing harmony vocals on the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman House stuff, but it's still Tony Levin playing the bass. It's a look, I'm gonna say it. This is a bad record. It's just not good.
I had an advanced promo cassette of that with no J card, no insert, no writing on it. And my friends and I think we were driving to one of the Union concerts because the tour started before the record came out, if memory serves. And Miracle of Life came on, which is a Yes West song. And I really think that's a good song. I like that song. And we were trying to pick out who's playing what part of it. And when you hear that mandolin sound, that mandolin strumming on Miracle of Life, it sounds like it's Steve Howe, but it's Trevor Rabin. And
Mm.
we're like, oh, cool, Steve Howe is playing on this song. But it was Rabin. And the bands are basically separate except for what you said. They grafted Anderson's lead vocal onto the Yes West songs and Squire's backing vocals onto some of the ABWH songs.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And that's the only way. It's called Union. It's really
Yeah.
not a union. It's a union for the
No.
record label. It was
Yeah.
another cash grab, basically.
It
You'll
was
sell more records
flagrant.
under the Yes banner.
Yes, it was flagrant false advertising, and I think Bill Bruford is on record saying it is the one album he's recorded that he is the most ashamed of. So,
Yep.
and Rick Wakeman, of course, always calls it Onion because he says every time he hears it, it makes him cry. But he also says that the Union tour was the best Yes tour he's ever on. So,
That I agree with because I saw at least half a dozen dates on this tour. They were all amazing. Even though you
yeah.
could tell there was big tension between Steve Howe and Trevor Rabin, they were on opposite sides of the stage. They're on opposite sides of all the press photos. It was basically coming from Steve Howe that he didn't want to play with another guitar player,
Hmm.
but he did it. But the tour was amazing. The tour is much better than the record.
So yeah, I mean, it was kind of diminishing returns though for Yes, wasn't it? Because 90125 triple platinum, Big Generator platinum, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe gold,
Gold. Yeah.
Union gold, and I don't think any Yes album since then has certified, unless it's like a best of or something like that. So,
Yeah, you're right.
um, you know, but Yes are still going to this day. They're still making albums. They're still touring, even though Steve Howe's the only member from sort of like classic lineup that's still left with them. And of course, John Anderson. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Davey, but last year put out a stunningly good solo album with the band Geeks. It was one of my top 10 albums of 2024. So,
Yeah, I briefly touched on it on my channel when I did my top five of 2024. I did it a little late in January, but I did do a quick show on that. And I mentioned that
yeah.
album. It's a really good record.
So there you have it, everyone. Those are our thoughts on Yes's Big Generator. What came before, what came after. Please do let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on Big Generator. Are you a defender of this album, or do you agree with Davey and I that it's not a terrible album, but a letdown after the brilliance that was 90125? Please let us know in the comments. Davey, thank you so much for doing the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. If you're not already subscribed to Cretin Classics, please fix that right now and go and subscribe. Links are in the description as always. Please do like, share, and subscribe here. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted. So if you want to see any of my other sequel to success shows, which I only have one of those so far, but there is a playlist for that already. If you want to see my studio albums ranked shows, and I am planning to do a Yes one at some stage, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, such as the aforementioned Cretin Classics, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.